Hey, what's up guys? So in this video I want to talk about something really important that I need more information on, and I actually need your help with. And specifically it has to do with the reliability of our countermeasures, our radar detectors, our dash cams, etc. I like to do a lot of testing on, performance and capabilities and how much range you get and how good the false alert filtering is on our detectors and how good dash cams are at capturing license plates and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that we don't have a lot of good information on, got some, but not a ton, is actually how reliable this stuff is. So like with the detector, for example, if you're driving around and it stops working properly, if the display no longer shows you signals or the speaker stops alerting you to signals, it could be detecting radar and you have no idea. It's basically not working properly. If the thing doesn't power on anymore, whatever, reliability of this stuff is really important too. Same thing with dash cams. You can have great sensors and cloud capabilities and all this kind of cool stuff, but if the thing just overheats in the sun while you're parked, shuts down, doesn't record, or you get into an accident and you found for whatever reason it didn't save that file to the memory card, the thing is useless. So we can get into all the testing of functionality and performance and whatnot, but reliability, that's really important too. And so I want to talk a little bit of how I've been approaching that so far, and also how I want to get more information, and this is where your help is going to come in. So when it comes to determining reliability with this kind of stuff, I've got two main sources. Number one is just my own experiences, and number two is the feedback that I hear from you guys on forums, on YouTube comments, etc. Now, in my own experience, I've tested a lot of different countermeasures. To be honest, I've had failures with basically every brand. Every single brand of radar detectors. I've had failures with dash cams. If it was just my own experience, I can just run through the list of issues that we've seen over time historically. I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend any brand if I was looking for something that was 100% reliable just in my own experience, right? And same thing with what I see on forums. People will report issues that they see that I might not have seen just due to they drive in a different area or sample variation or whatever. And same thing as far as seeing on YouTube comments. I see the comments all the time. You guys are constantly saying hey, I bought something based on your recommendation and it's been great. And then the next comment is man, this stinks. I bought it and the thing died on me. And where do you go with this kind of stuff, And that's actually one of the tricky things from a reviewer perspective. I really care about you guys having an awesome experience. I'll spend a ton of time testing and researching and, talking to you guys online and talking to manufacturers and trying to get as much information as I can about how it performs and all the pros and cons. And I want to pack all that information in and give you guys as much as possible. I can't necessarily talk about every single thing that every person would possibly need to know, good or bad, but I try to focus on the main things that we see, good and bad, right? If there's maybe a one-off issue here and there, I don't know, is that legitimately an issue? Is that a one-off thing? I've seen issues if somebody says, my display died, and then you investigate a little bit more and you're oh, whoops, they just turned the brightness down on their detector and then they turn it back on and it works. You got to investigate this kind of stuff. But if you start seeing repeated issues over and over and over, then you're hey, I think there's something to this, right? And to get that kind of stuff, it's just having a lot of information coming in from comments and forums and stuff. And forums can also be really good to do a poll. If we're hey, a lot of us are experiencing this issue, we'll just throw up a poll and see all right, how many people are actually reporting this, And we'll get a sense, is it 10% of people, 20, 30, 50, whatever, and we start getting more data points like that. One potential downside I found of polling on forums is the fact that people a lot of times go to forums for tech support related stuff, customer service. If you have a failure, you're maybe you contact the manufacturer or you go to a support forum or something to try to get help with your issue, right? So if you have issues and complaints, a lot of times you're going to go to a forum. But if you're just driving around, everything's working great, no issues, you just go about your life. You're not going to, chances are, unless you're an enthusiast or something, you're not going to go hang out on forums for dash cameras and radar detectors. You're just driving around, going about your life. And so you're going to see more issues exacerbated on forums just because that's where people go when they have issues, And so the question then becomes all right, how do we get good data on this? How do we get as much information as possible to get a really good sense of the big picture? Well, I was thinking about those surveys that JD Power does for people who buy cars. They basically just go and survey people after they buy them to see hey, has it been good for you? Have you had issues? Etc. And I just pulled up the one for 2023, and the results were actually not exactly what I expected. At the top of the list, there were some Japanese and even Korean manufacturers that were up there. Lexus and Toyota was up there too. I traditionally think of Toyota and Honda as the most reliable ones, but surprisingly Honda was actually below average, which is not what I was expecting. Good to, I guess, get some data on it, to see how things are looking. At the bottom of the list, you had like some German and some British brands that were there. But either way, I like the idea of them actually like just asking people, what's been your experience? And so I figured I'll try the same kind of thing. So I've created 3 different surveys, and this is where you come in. I've got one survey for radar detectors, a second one for laser jammers, and a third one for dash cams. And if you own any of those, I'll have links down in the video description to where you can go and just help me kind of get a sense of your experience and put all the information together. Now, the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask you about a bunch of different brands. Hopefully you own at least one of those brands or something. And you're going to see that I ask, have you had any like critical issues, any minor issues, or no issues at all? An example of what would be a critical issue is like something major that prevents the thing from working properly. So for like a radar detector, if it will not power on, or the display fails, or the speaker fails, or it just stops detecting radar even though it looks like it's working properly, or whatever, something like that, that's a critical failure, right? A minor failure would be something like, I don't know, the suction cup like doesn't stick properly, or the paint is fading off the case, or just something kind of small like that. So I'm just kind of like distinguishing between like big issues and smaller issues. Same thing for dash cams. Like if it does something that prevents it from doing its main job, which is to like record while you drive or park, that's a critical failure. If it's something like, oh, I'm having trouble, updating the firmware, or I'm having trouble like getting the app to connect, like that's annoying too, but that's more of like a minor issue, So we're focusing on like major critical issues as well as smaller ones. And then if you don't have any issues, there's an option for that as well. I'm also curious to hear like, there's an option there where you can enter in like what models of the different brands that you own. I'm also curious if you could share a little bit more information as far as like what were the issues that you've seen, and then also were you able to resolve those issues? Like I get it, stuff happens, but hopefully you can contact the manufacturer, maybe they can help you troubleshoot it, or there's a firmware update that's released that fixes an issue, or maybe there's some sort of like replacement that's done under warranty, or there's a recall where they fix the issue. Like I've seen a variety of things over the years, but I'm also really curious if you could let me know if you've been able to resolve those issues one way or another. So hopefully with that information we can get some really good information. It's always hard to do it just kind of off of like random things you hear on the internet. Everything has problems. I want to give good recommendations, but no matter what I choose or anybody would choose, somebody, potentially you, is gonna have some issues with it, and I really want you guys to have a good experience. So if you can head on over there, just help me answer a couple questions. It shouldn't take more than a couple minutes or so. Yeah, let me know, and that way we can start to get like some good data and get a sense on like, okay, which brands of this stuff are most reliable, which ones are the most problematic. I don't think that's going to be like the perfect end-all be-all, but hopefully that's going to be a good way for us to kind of like get this conversation going and get a better sense as far as reliability with our countermeasures. And so yeah, let me know your thoughts as well. I'm curious to hear. Thanks for watching. Hope you're doing great. I'll see you in the next video.